everyone. Welcome to Building Inclusive Digital Economies and Web3 panel. How is everyone? Good. How are you guys? Okay, perfect. I'm Safina. I think we'll just do a quick round of intros. I'm the co-founder of Chain Giving. I'm here representing Chain Giving today. I developed Chain Giving with my two co-founders who I met working at Parity Technologies. So Parity builds the protocol for the Polkadot network. And Chain Giving provides end-to-end transparency and full tracking of charity donations. Just a quick one about the background of Chain Giving. It was heavily influenced by the UN World Food Programme project that was built on a private Parity blockchain. Our founder worked on that project, and that influenced Chain Giving. But we're taking it one step further. That was a private blockchain. We want full end-to-end tracking on a public blockchain. So that's a bit about Chain Giving, and I'll hand it over to you guys to do a quick intro.
Are we on? Okay. Ooh, there we go. All right, how y'all doing? I am Trek with two Ks, right? And I'm gonna preface this and say I work for the federal government, but that's not the capacity and how I'm here today. I don't have any of the other connections that it seems a number of the other panelist folks have had. I just happen to have been in this space for a good number of years at this point and played around in different aspects of it, right? So my stuff is more like timeline, observational. The thing that I'm noted for now is Weekend Crypto, which is something I put together, pitched it to Bitcoin Zay and King of the Gentlemen of Crypto, and did that more than 2 years. And it's just been, giving commentary on what I've seen develop in this space for more than 10 years. And traveling around to different places, because I used to do another thing called Trekking Cryptos to Connect, and just seeing how it's worked here in the States, how it's worked in other places like South Africa, or how it's worked in like Korea, and it's a real big chasm for how it develops, and that's just the short of it for me.
Hey everybody, I'm Vasa. I've been in this game for probably about 7 years. I got invited to the first blockchain summit by Janae Roscoe, Operation Hope. I always give her a shout out, but I'm happy to be here and be talking about something that I'm actually familiar with for the first time. This is building digital inclusive communities, and the state of the space right now, data is the last horizon. And they're pulling community data in order to be able to, extracting community data through the same methods, same technologies they've been using. It's just more advanced, even with AI, to be able to monetize their marketplaces and their industries. And if we don't start building infrastructure that's focused around data sovereignty, then we won't have anything to monetize in the future. I've been saying this for a while, but there are people that are out there that are moving in this lane, and I think it's really important for our community to get involved as quickly as possible. Excited to have that conversation, and that's it.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kamal Hubbard, and got into the space in 2016 off of some independent research that I had done for quite some time. I first came across the concept of Bitcoin in 2011 when I was doing postdoc studies at Stanford University's Rock Center for Corporate Governance, which is a joint collaboration between Stanford's Graduate School of Business and Stanford's Law School. Worked with a former Securities and Exchange Commissioner there, and we were studying the subprime mortgage crisis and how it bubbled up from, just that, it being that, a subprime mortgage crisis into a global credit crisis. Saw Bitcoin and wondered, is this some like internet Dungeons and Dragons money, or is this real? Because if it's real, it's a solution to a problem that came out of that subprime mortgage crisis. And like I said, spent 2 years doing independent research, became an over-the-counter trader, started a North Hollywood based cryptocurrency exchange that was focused on music artists. Worked with two Warner music executives at the time. And needless to say, the major labels weren't ready for it and didn't really want it either. And but what I did see is a lot of banks, family offices, venture capital firms, and hedge funds trying to get their hands on as much Bitcoin as possible. And none of them were asking, hey, we saw Bitcoin actually come into prominence, once again, as a solution to big banks failing, a big bank failure. No one was looking out for our community in terms of, hey, how can we make Bitcoin more inclusive? So I wrote a book called DeFi for the Diaspora so that people can understand the history of money and make this subject a little bit more approachable. Thanks again for having me.
How's everyone doing? My name is Al Cabia, and I'm the regional director for Bitwise covering the Mid-Atlantic. Sounds like a long title. All I do is specifically come to neighborhoods and environments to help financial advisors allocate to crypto. We have traditional finance within the US, and there's advisors that manage the wealth for a number of different types of families, and my goal is to get them off zero and really bring and get more dollars within the ecosystem of crypto.
I think we'll get into our first question. I'm facilitating this panel, but I'll also be actively involved in the discussion. The first question is, what does building an inclusive digital economy mean in your field? I think I'll go first. So for me and my experience at Polkadot, I found that inclusivity was often tied very closely to mass adoption. So it's like, we want to include you, of course we want to include you. We want to include everyone. And it's mostly about people, it's mostly tied to people that don't know much about crypto. And the solution, often the solution for that is just building better UX. So last summer I worked at Berkeley for the Polkadot Blockchain Academy, and that aimed to include startup founders, but I didn't find it to be very inclusive of the community. So inclusivity to me means going a step further than just including everybody and just thinking about mass adoption, but more specifically including individuals from underrepresented backgrounds. Or alternatively, we amplify existing Web2 projects to use blockchain to empower their audiences. So my question for the rest of the panel is, what does building an inclusive digital economy mean in your field?
I think I'll take this first. For me, I'm finally in a position where I can pass on a resume for someone to potentially have a job opportunity within wealth management and finance in general, generally speaking. And typically when I go into a room, I'm probably the only person of color, Black specifically. So I tend not to pass on certain resumes if I don't connect with them on a deeper level. But once I get someone that looks like me in a room and I'm able to kind of coach them up and get them up to speed, almost give them the questions that might be on the interview to get them into the room. For me, it's like getting folks that look like me into the spaces that historically have not allowed them to be in the space.
Yeah, for my space, it's really about bridging the digital divide. You've got this physical brick and mortar economy that's transforming into this data-driven fueled economy, and then you have this data thing this technology thing that's kind of landing on us. And the problem is that they're doing this without regard for what's happening to the communities that we live in. So my focus in bridging the digital divide is best practices for bridges is to build from both sides at the same time. But we haven't been doing that. And instead, you've got technology that's landing on people and they're extracting the data to be able to create more tech, but people are being phased out. And so blockchain's interesting because blockchain at its core is you can use it for ownership. And ownership is one of the first things and one of the most important aspects of what data sovereignty is. You have ownership. Well, what we're doing with the UMI economy is looking at it from ownership, stewardship, and now there's an opportunity for presence where you can actually own and hold and interact with your information in a way never done before. And we're not there yet, but if we want to be there and if we want to build infrastructure and build economy, then we need to start thinking about owning the IP, being the developers of that technology that's moving in that direction, and then also being the people that are the core investors in that. What Cleve Mesidor said earlier when she was speaking and talking about we need to get more engaged, that is what needs to happen. We need to be focused on how we can collaborate and build using the foundational IP that's in the room, and working with the developers that are in the room, and working with the people that are investors and have access to capital in the room to be building an economy that allows for us to actually make a difference. Because if we don't do that, we're not going to be able to have the opportunity to do the jobs thing that we want to do, workforce development, capacity building, training, and data sovereignty is a future industry. I was a part of co-authoring a document that was published by the UN a few years ago, and when they talked about how this economy is aging, and over the next few years, there's a few sub-economies that actually make sense for us to be exploring if we want to make sure that humanity has a place and has a position to participate in the 21st century economy that we're standing on right now. But in order for that to happen, we have to start building and we have to start doing it together. So that's my focus.
Yeah. Well, I definitely feel like education is a very strong component. One of the reasons why I think a lot of us come to the spaces we're marketed to that this is inclusive, but then we don't know how to be proper operators or proper developers. And getting kids while they're young, I mean, they see a lot of this stuff on TikTok and YouTube, and they get asked to contribute and buy certain tokens and buy certain coins, but they're not being told to actually become a blockchain developer, become a coder. Because really, that's where I see most of the value being. And that's where I want to work with people, especially within our communities. And that's where I feel like there's a chance of it becoming a little bit more inclusive if we can get people who understand the technology at its core level first.
Oh boy. All right. I'm gonna say 2 books, and I'm gonna tie it into a couple of different people. First book, The Color of Money. It talks about how the US, in a local sense, did things to talk about inclusion of the Black people's capital from the Civil War on forwards. The senators, the laws, the states, the mayors, the governors, all of those people, like here's names and places in that book. There's another book called Tragedy and Hope. This book goes back to when you're talking about the first part of colonialism and imperialism on a global scale for what Europe was doing in Africa, in Asia, in South America. And like the way that they looked at how they wanted to divide it up and how we moved the locals, the Black and brown people, into these different categories, and then we do certain things to make it that we extract capital from them and not include them in the creation of it. All right? Bring those 2 books up if you're a person who's into reading. Tragedy and Hope is a very long book. Okay? If you're not for reading, find an audiobook. Cleve made a point about how we got to get better at being in these conversations and show that we have influence on the people who may not, quote, look like us, but they're having the conversations with the policymaker people. We got to have a better strategy for that individually, and I can't tell you what is like the best thing of what every person is supposed to do and what their part is supposed to be for how they make this, quote, space more inclusive. In my mind, the technology is colorblind because it's technology. But because we're people, because we're humans, we have this thing of where we want to say, oh, well, I got my hand on this, or oh, this is connected to me. I remember when we used to say that blockchain or the Bitcoin blockchain was a whole universal global thing. Then we got into this conversation pre-2020 where it was like, oh, well, it has to be an American thing. And now we're getting into this like patriotic nationalism thing of it. But that's a whole nother animal, right? In my mind, for how I see it now, and looking from 2011 to how we are now, everyone's gonna have a different role in how they put their energy and effort into making this thing inclusive. And inclusive is for like whatever you're saying your community of folks is, right? X amount of us here say, well, my community of folks gotta look like me. Cool, I'm not even gonna knock you on that. I'll help you, I'll put you and connect you with certain people to talk to about it. But if you're saying, well, I just wanna find the like-minded people, not everybody that look like you is gonna be your like-minded people. But if you're saying it's about inclusion and you wanna find that group of folks who are like you just can't sit in the one place and be like, oh, well, they gotta come to me. No, you actually gotta get out there. When you start going into different cities, when you start making it into different states, when you start going into different countries, it's a whole different animal when you go into like South Korea to see how they look at crypto compared to how we was looking at back in 2016. It's a whole different thing when you go into Johannesburg, and you see how those folks look at crypto and the whole mobileness of money. M-Pesa as a digital currency was something more than 20 years ago. Bitcoin itself is only just about making it to be a teenager right now. I get distracted. At core right now for how I see things, we gotta start pushing on the legal side because as he was just making a point about the digital agency part of it, the way that our policies and regulations work internationally, nothing is written to give you as the end user your actual digital agency. So if you don't have the digital agency, we could talk all feel goods we want to about collectivism and inclusism. But if you don't have, in the legal sense, what works to say you as this individual, as a sovereign individual, have right and agency to your data, right? That you produce, that you generate, that you manipulate, that you create. All the rest of the stuff for how the businesses and the corporations and the governments are operating now, inclusion is a nice catchphrase. But at the end of the day, the policies and the way the technology things are being built out aren't working for inclusion for how we're talking about it in this room. So I don't really got the best answer, but I think we need to start pushing on the regulatory side of it just a little bit more, and not just here. Because again, if we're saying this technology is supposed to be accessible any and everywhere, it's an across-the-board thing. That's it.
And this leads me to my next question. So what are some things that all of you have seen or experienced so far, nationally or globally, that have had an impact on inclusion? I know, Kamal, you're in the intersection of civil rights and emerging technology often. So what are some things that you've seen so far that have had an impact positively on inclusion or negatively?
Well, recently I've had the opportunity to work with a project called Personal DAO, which is a customizable DAO product, and kind of goes in the face of what we're even talking about at this panel. But there's been a lot of communities and constituencies that have been really good at gatekeeping their various cultures and their contributions when it comes to other communities such as ours. So Personal DAO allows people to create their own DAO product where they can have their own governance. And a lot of people say, well, isn't that discriminatory, being able to gatekeep your own community in its own way, shape, or form? And yeah, even though we've had civil rights for quite some time now, on the cab ride over here, a guy was telling me how much things haven't changed. So as much as laws are great on their face, sometimes in their application, they're not as equal and civil as they should be. So why I think personal DAO is important is it can allow, once again, some of these like-minded folks to get together and gatekeep the things that they feel important. And just like Eric Guthrie said earlier today, once the law catches up, it catches up. But in the meantime, take that head start and do your due diligence to build as much as possible. So I'm working with them and looking forward to some of the things that we can do together to hopefully level the playing field.
What is an encouraging thing that I've seen of recent for inclusion? I'm gonna say the Black Blockchain Summit, because now, because of work environment and other things, I'm definitely a skeptical person, right? But in remembering how the first year was, when we only had the one room over and it was both days for everything, and that, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you've been to the first location, you know how big the room is, okay? And then to think that we made it into COVID, they were still able to put something together. We're post-COVID, we still have an event happening, and like people are showing out, right? And then you're meeting people that, like, if you want to talk about the inclusion thing, like, you're meeting people that you would normally not come across, especially if you're not in DC. And if you're not one of the people who are jumping around to the different events, whether it be on the East Coast, West Coast, or international. Like, I've definitely met people here over the years that I would have never came across in some of my other travels. And then I've met people here who I go to other places like, oh, what you doing out here? It happens. So I'm gonna count the Black Blockchain Summit as my positive thing.
Well, you took my answer, bro. Yeah. But on the same theme, my experience being here, it's been the same thing. I met just being here, I was able to connect with Sinclair, and that's what gave me access to a community that would even be open to what it is that we were talking about. We had a long-term play, and people were looking at us like we were crazy. Then COVID happened, and technology went up, then you have generative AI, and all of a sudden, we have an opportunity to speak at other places, but I've always been welcome here. My IP attorney, Jesse Fenty, came from the Black Blockchain Summit. And he's nice, like, he's amazing at what it is that he is. There's times I didn't know what Jesse was doing, and he educated me the whole time, so I've been able to learn, I've been able to grow. It's tough because you don't have this type of warmth out there trying to work with other communities and stuff. They're looking at you like you don't know what you're talking about. So I really have genuine appreciation and respect for being able to be here. And in terms of inclusion, this is like one of the few places that I've ever had a chance to even get it. So
I hate to, for the third time, recycle an answer, but I'd have to say the Black Blockchain Summit. This is my first year here, and I'm actually down in Richmond, Virginia, so I drove up this morning, to come and network and engage. And I just have to say the booth setup that is all out there. I talk about crypto on a day-to-day basis and trying to get people to allocate, but I'm still all through the exhibit learning about hash rate, learning about mining rigs. There's someone I still need to meet, the crypto attorney or CPA, to make sure that I pay my taxes correctly. But even beyond that, meeting someone that, as I'm talking about these concepts of Web3, again, integrating it within portfolios, being able to have an artist, create an NFT version of their physical art to verify that this is authentic. It's just amazing to be in a place like this where there's people that look like me again, but I'm also able to have something that is from work, but also now reality, because I'm actually meeting someone that I'm gonna buy some art from and have an NFT version of that as well. So I'd have to say that this summit.
Absolutely. I mean, likewise, I could also mention other projects that are building inclusivity, like the Giving Block is a fantastic project that's building inclusivity on blockchain by focusing on charities and nonprofits and involving them in the space. But on a day-to-day level, on a people level, and on a personal level, the Black Blockchain Summit is fantastic. I mean, I've come from London to be here. I'm super happy to be here. I'm super excited to be here. There isn't a lot of spaces like this, definitely not in London, in Europe. I mean, in my career and my experiences, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to the sentiment of feeling like you're the only one, or the only woman, or the only Black woman. So it's a really impactful space, and I've heard a lot about how it's grown over the years. So I'm super excited to be here. I also think this is a very intersectional space, and it's important to address those intersectional challenges. How can we ensure that this new digital economy is not a reflection of the economy that exists now and does not replicate history? My question really is, how can we ensure Black women are not left out? How will you ensure that Black women are not left out? And how will you ensure that this digital economy is inclusive?
I'll definitely say that we have a chance, any situation where we have the chance to become and create the best practices ourselves and to create the standards ourselves, we should do that. Standards are really important because everybody else has to operate by those standards. I think that one attorney had stood up and he had said that these guys are already, the big companies are already compliant. It's because they created the standards. And so if we want to create a space and an environment where Black women and Black men could be safe, then we should be out in front, not just, I think you were saying, like regulation, the policy, and focusing not just on the tech. We started on the technology side. Another one of my partners, David Benjamin, shout out to David, we actually created David's brilliant, his brother is a genius. We have patents together, building some great things, but that didn't change the fact that people were like, well, where's the real world applications for what it is that you're building? Who's gonna benefit? So we thought we had built this great thing and we were just gonna have all this money come in, but instead it was like, well, who are you helping? And I'm glad that we got steered in that direction because we went over to the social side and we saw who was being cut out from opportunities, and it was everybody that looked like us. And so we started looking at, okay, well, maybe it's not just the tech. Maybe we need to be thinking about the education around what data sovereignty is so that we can be the ones to create the textbooks that other people are reading and stuff. And now, if you have a university and you want to align yourself with, the future and have your students ready for the future curriculum and what that's going to be, then you can be collaborating with us on things like that. But it's been a journey. I think education's a big thing, and I do think that being the ones to create the standards is how you end up protecting the people that need to be protected.
I have a real example. So first of all, I think passing the information that you have on to the surrounding community that you have. So obviously, my two brothers are back there, and I've gotten them on the train of crypto. Thank you guys for coming. So there's certain advisors that I work with, and there's a few of them, a very small portion, I'd say maybe about 4% that are Black. I have a budget annually to do events for their end clients. So what I do specifically is like I give my resources specifically to them because they look like me. So Joan, she lives up in Baltimore. We actually did a Zoom where there's about 40 of her clients, all Black, which is amazing, where I did a Crypto 101, explaining to them what this new technology is. So for me personally, it's actually having, presentations and, doing events to get people like me to understand what this new technology is.
All right, sorry. Like some of the stuff I gotta think about, and the reason is like, when you've been sitting in the space for a while and not just like in one location or just on one part of it. Like if you were doing trading back in 2012, you looking at what's going on right now and you just blown away, okay? If you was doing the dev work back in 15 and then you see how things are going here, versus what's going on in like Portugal or Lesbian and stuff, you're just like, yo, it's a different thing. If you're looking at it from the content side, the story narratives and like what we've been sold as the user base, what our technical folks understand versus how we as like non-technical people understand it, or like how the regulators understand it, or how like the CEOs of companies understand it. It's been a crazy like roller coaster to watch. And so like, what do we do? Arguably, you through trial and error and failing forward, you figure out what is going to work for you. And also the other part of like, sometimes you just you gotta get out of like your local area. Cause there's a number of American folks who are in Korea, who are in Portugal, who are in different countries within Africa. They was trying to do stuff here and was getting a crazy pushback and was getting a crazy just like roadblocks. And they had to go someplace else. Sometimes it just might not be your hometown, right? Sometimes you gotta go someplace else and then meet other folks and get inspired or get that like encouragement that gets you past that step. That would be my thought on that one.
Well, I think when we're talking about diversity, we have to recognize, or in particular when it comes to bringing more Black women into the industry and the field, is recognizing that Black women approach every problem differently than anybody else. And they do it in a way that's very special and unique. And when we can have that perspective in the industry, it'll only make it better. So give Black women crypto, give them as much education as possible so that they can find a way to solve more of these problems in that distinctly unique way that they do. And so I've done everything that I can, from listening, as well as getting my books to charities that focus on women's issues. And like I said, just being an open ear and gifting crypto when I can too. Because I think, how else are you gonna get someone interested in this? And just saying, hey, here it is, do what you want with it, because we all go through that process of the learning curve. And if I just say, okay, here's my book, learn about crypto and find your own way, it may just sit on the bookshelf. Whereas if I give someone X amount of Bitcoin or X amount of Ethereum and tell them, find your way, they'll figure it out. And unfortunately, you may make some mistakes, but there's always that percentage of people, which is most of us, who find a way to make it beneficial to their lives. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think Black women have a totally different lens to anybody else just because it's intersectional gender and race. I think it's also important to consider communities that aren't involved in, I mean, for me in chain giving, we consider communities that aren't in blockchain yet, but are facilitating spaces for Black women already. And then, hey, we can introduce you to a whole new group of donors by you just accepting cryptocurrency for your project or nonprofit. So that's also something that we can consider, spaces that already exist, and introducing those spaces to this technology to see how it can amplify their voices. I think we have a couple minutes left for questions. If anybody has any questions, jump up to the mic. But if not, do you guys have any last words, any positive words for encouragement for people at the conference, people that care a lot about inclusivity? Go ahead.
Again, FASA, I'm with the UMI Economy, and we're getting ready to launch our Intro to Data Sovereignty workshop series, where we're going to be educating people, educating the community about what this whole data sovereignty is. Data sovereignty situation, we're talking about community-based organizations, both public and private as well, because we're looking at data sovereignty certifications, and we're taking a completely different approach to tech. Our goal is to truly build an economy, which means it's going to be slow, which means you got to have like a 50-year plan, which means that you have to be thinking in stages and thinking about who do you really have to have in the room that can think with that level of foresight. So I want to invite everybody. I think November 6th, November 13th, and November 20th, I'll be sending out an email. Hopefully you all check your email. It'd be great to see you and to have that level of support. I really do think we need to be supporting each other. And if there's anything I can do to support you in your work and what you have going on, please let me know. Please come see me. And that's what this is about. Thank you.
Last word. I know we are like the latter part of the day, so if you haven't at least exchanged contact with at least one person since you've been here, you did yourself a disservice. Whether it had been on the techie side, whether it had been on just like, oh, you said something interesting, I'd like to follow up with a question on that, something. You might not see the turnaround in a month, you might not see the turnaround in 3 months, but the idea is that if you at least exchange with one person, you're gonna see them next year. You might go to an event in 3-6 months from now. You might run across them then, be like, oh yeah, I remember you at blah, blah, blah. If we're talking about this thing on the feel-good side of inclusion and connecting, just at least try to get one person's contact. And there's a bunch of folks on there, mad smart people right here, mad smart people on the panels before, who are doing things, right? Just at least one person, that's it.
Well, I would encourage folks to definitely come back to the Black Blockchain Summit next year, because it's only going to be better. But also check out at least one other conference and check the vibe. It's nothing like it the way it is here. So, but in the meantime, I'm working with the Blockchain Literacy Initiative to, once again, educate as many people around blockchain as possible, get in people who are new, free of charge, looking to understand this better and hopefully build a career around it and build a more inclusive economy.
I have a challenge for everyone. If you can get one person in your direct network to just even think of blockchain or crypto as something they want to buy and purchase, we'll double and triple the size of this conference next year. So if we can all just talk to at least one person post this conference, that'll help grow the conference greatly.
Question? Yep.
The mic on the stand, the mic on the stand.
I understand. So, to everybody on the stage, what is the most likely way that this particular demographic can make just a realistic difference in the industry? Because I don't think buying tokens would be it, but if it is, I'd love to hear your opinion. And I love conferences, but I don't think going to conferences would do it, or summits. So assuming those two are not it, right, how do you really make a difference? How do you get to own the infrastructure, and how do you get to look Brian Armstrong in his eyes, eye to eye, face to face, as an equal?
Just so I'm clear on your question is how can people in this room make a difference outside of just going to a conference?
Right.
Okay.
Well, there was a really wise man a long time ago by the name of Reggie Middleton who said, you have to build your infrastructure. Build the infrastructure. Right? Because if you're just a drop in a stream, you're just flowing within the stream. But if you're the actual pipeline, everything's running through you. So I think that's been the most powerful statement that stuck with me and resonated with me for a long time. But I'm going to pass the mic on.
I would say make them. If we grow this community, this summit to a size where you can't ignore anymore, and you're able to go to your politician and make noise, they have to answer. So just make them.
I see what you did there, sir. I see what you did. And it's a reiteration of I'm sorry, got your name at the moment, but what he said about the part of the infrastructure, right? So like, where does this community collectively sit within the value chain of whatever the industry is? So are we talking about it in terms of just solely technology? Are we patent holders? Are we IP holders? Whichever thing we need to go to like say at the core base part of this tech stack stuff, we got a part of it that you can't work around without developing upon it, right? That's arguably the direction that he's talking about going in. And then there's the other part of like getting to legislative sessions or a part of legislative communities that are actually making these policies and regulations. The whole thing of just going to the board meeting or the committee meeting and sitting in the background and then listening to committee member blah, 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 or senator such, such, and such, everyone talks a fair game on stage. There's nothing that holds them accountable for what they say on stage to how they execute once you leave the meeting. It's the same thing with White House press conferences. There's nothing that holds them accountable for what they say on the podium for when the thing is done. It's, did you get someone in who actually aligns with your views? Are they like-minded enough to be like, all right, we'll start actually making policies that encourage this kind of trajectory for future development? If the policies don't back it up, at the end of the day, we still on feel-good talking stuff.
The question shook me because I knew I wasn't going to be able to answer it right. But for me, believe it or not, with our collective experience and what it is that we've had to deal with as a community, it's a form of trauma. And if we don't learn to deal with our internal trauma and learn how to communicate and interact with one another, the infrastructures that I've seen that are out there are built by trust, large families that own banks and own railroads and own things that it's because they stick together and they have trust. And it's very hard to do trust if you have so much trauma in your bloodline. I think that we have to be more vulnerable. I think that we have to operate with high character and high integrity. And I think that we need to let each other know that we love one another and start building things that, that start with the heart. And I think there's enough brilliant people in the room. The only reason why why haven't we done it yet? We've been together for years. Or if it is happening, I haven't seen it happen at the level that it could happen if we were to look at things that go beyond the technology itself and recognize that we only have each other. That's it.
And thank you. I also just want to just add to that. I think the 0 to 1 here is really to mobilize, and that's the only way you can build infrastructure and build on these ideas. And build on these concepts is really to mobilize together. And this era of technology is really taking a traumatized demographic from an individual mindset to a collective mindset, which is very difficult. And the important thing is to develop these think tanks, develop these research groups, understand these concepts, these difficult technical concepts, understand the jargon together. I'm sure a lot of people did this by themselves. I did it by myself, like really just learning by yourself. The key is really to mobilize and learn together. And understanding these systems and these governance systems and DAOs and what that means. And then there you can actually build infrastructure and become a collective. So that's just what I wanted to add to that. And we have a question. Hi.
Hello. So my name is Nicole Nixon. If you didn't write that down, please do. It's Nicole Nixon. I am the CEO and founder of Listing Central. It is the first data-only company that manages telecom data in the United States. So I say that first to say, women, we are here. It's important that I'm speaking in this session because blockchain is one thing, data is another. So to the gentleman's question, how do our young people get involved? They need to research, they need to ask questions, and they need to show up like they're doing today. But keep in mind, I'm data. I'm not here in this session because we are sometimes too much in a silo. So instead of the young people thinking to start at blockchain, start at technology and meet us at blockchain. We are a powerful people. We don't have to just do one thing. We can do multiple things, but no one's going to give it to you. You must research, learn for yourself, and build for yourself to help expand our territories. So to my brothers, to whom too I know on this platform, what other events of technology should we be touching? Because I will make sure to speak up everywhere I go until you start reading more about me, because those who don't look like us know I'm here. My people don't yet, but you will. So to my brothers, where else should we go? I know it's more than just blockchain, so please give our audience an idea of some of the other technologies they may be able to look into that can meet you where you are. Thank you.
Well, I definitely think outside of attending blockchain conferences, go to AI conferences as well. There's obviously a convergence of blockchain and AI. It's very natural convergence. So that, as well as cybersecurity. I mean, national security is, it's big, and especially we're moving away from the sort of warfare that used to be played out. Obviously conventional warfare. So if you're looking to get into this industry more, there's also going to be a convergence, there's a natural convergence, once again, with cybersecurity and blockchain too. So if you're interested in blockchain, check out AI and cybersecurity.
Yeah, I was going to say AI for sure. Cybersecurity is a great one. The meta web is another thing. I think the internet is at a place now where it's we have new technology. My partners and I, we had worked on some technology called the meta web, the overweb, and we're talking about an environment that sits above the internet. That's always been there, but we've never built the infrastructure for it because we didn't care that humanity had a way to be able to use technology to be able to protect itself and support itself and to build economic opportunities for itself. So that would be another thing, is the meta web, and that's a book on Amazon as well.
Keeping on brand for a blockchain conference, there's a growing ecosystem of companies that support blockchain, specifically miners is one. You have the people that create semiconductor chips and actually lease these out to AI companies as well. So on a broad stroke, just looking into technology would be like a great start. But obviously, I'm a little bit more biased because I love crypto and definitely would love people like me that look like me to be in the space.
Hey,
So, granted, crypto blockchain events are like arguably a dime a dozen now. Not like how it was in like the 16, 17 period, but it's still a lot of them out there. I'm gonna go in a different direction and say, if we're saying technology, telecom, hackathons, data center storage, data storage, like industry-related stuff. If we're talking tech, because at the end of the day, all of this data has to sit somewhere. Also, space conferences, whether we're talking about the terrestrial or the extraterrestrial side of where the technology is sitting at. But those type of events are other areas of technology that will, in some form or way, involve AI, will have some level of relation to cybersecurity, will in some way involve blockchain as a method of data storage because of the immutability factor, right? So those are the other type of events that I would say, like, look into those things. And even if you don't get none of the tech, don't worry about it. There's someone there who can explain it to you. The idea is that you at least have an awareness of where those industries are moving towards. If there's an opportunity for you to connect with somebody who can give you some insight or at least generate interest to be like, well, how do I find out more about that? And how can I make it relevant to like what I want to try to get done, whether we're talking about career, or whether we're talking about like, investment, whatever. But the part is, at least get to the event. Don't worry that you're the only one who look like you in there. It's okay. Once you get past the first event, go to another event. And guess what? When you make enough events, I promise you, you will start to be like, oh, I remember that face. Hey, didn't I see you at such and such? And then you go from there. Like, you want to build the inclusion, you got to get out there. That's it.
yeah. So,
Hi.
I'm going to make a quick statement to help everyone. I'm going to give you two pieces of data about two grants. A good friend of mine is a grant writer. They get about $25 to $40 million in grants approved each quarter. The first grant is called the REAP grant, R-E-A-P. Look it up. It's under the USDA. This is not a scam. If you live in a rural area or you do anything with like growing vegetables or husbandry, which is with animals and things of that nature, the government will give you half the money back if you put a renewable energy source on that piece of property. Is everybody tracking? So if you are, and I'll give you a really basic example. If you're a CEO and you're mining Bitcoin and you have some chickens and some goats out in the yard. Okay, she said keep going, but we got to wrap it up. So here's the deal. I'm just going to give you this phone number, and then you all can come talk to me after this, because we just got a grant approved for a guy, Mr. Forrest. Well, no, it's not approved yet, but about to be approved. And, over 18 months, this guy's going to get like 114% of his initial investment back, right? Because the government gives you half. The state gives you another half, then they give you more incentives. Then, oh, by the way, you're not going to have an electric bill. Let me tell you something that I know about every corporation I've ever seen in my life. It takes money to function, to pay employees for overhead and those things. It's real talk. So I'll leave it at this. If you want to give yourself a better opportunity, come and talk to me, because the second grant doesn't even require you to put up money. It includes brown sites. Brown sites, and I'll give them this definition, I'll be quiet. Brown sites are sites that were formerly developed, right? But now they're dilapidated, right? An old rundown factory, a raggedy neighborhood. We've seen them around, right? Graffiti and all that. Well, if you're gonna rehabilitate that area and include renewable energy in that process, you may qualify. And the max just went up from $2 million to $50 million for these projects. And the only people that are getting approved is 2 groups, and none of them look like us. And I can tell you that for a fact that I've seen it with these eyes. Last thing I'll say is I've been in this Bitcoin game for how long? About 13 years? Trust me, this will get you over the hump, and I plan to sell some of my Bitcoin just to engage in this because I'm going to get the money back anyway, okay? So come talk to me. I'll give you the number.
All right, all right, all right. Let's give it up for the panel. Let's give it up for the panel.